Hello, this is our presentation about Stonewall by me, Leslie, Amy, Harris, and Simming. In 1924, Henry Gerber founded in Chicago the Society for Human Rights, the first documented gay rights organization in the United States. The organization sought to promote and protect the rights of individuals who face discrimination because of their sexuality or gender identity. Right here is the charter the official state of Illinois granted the organization on December 24, 1924, making it the oldest documented homosexual organization in the nation. The Society for Human Rights as well published Friendship and Freedom from 1924 to 1925, a short-lived American gay interest newsletter that served as a forum of discussion among gay men. Only 2 issues were produced before police raided Gerber's home and destroyed anything relating to the newsletters as there was a strong opposition of LGBTQ plus content. Now, while this was the first gay rights organization in the United States, there already existed advocacy for equal rights for homosexuals in other parts of the world. Therefore, it's important to note Henry Gerber was inspired by Magnus Hirschfeld, a German physician and sex researcher who sought to educate the public about sexuality to reduce prejudice and misguided assumptions about gay men during the early 90s, as there was a German statute in place, known as Paragraph 175, that criminalized sexual relations between men. Now, this statute predated the Nazi regime, but it was revised by the Nazis in 1935 to broaden the meaning of sexual relations, where the simple act of looking or touching another man was considered sexual. Therefore, the number of quote-unquote gay men punished, either by being sent to prison or to concentration camps, increased dramatically. That's how the infamous pink triangle came to be. The badge served to shame gay men and further dehumanize them, as the Nazis viewed them as degenerate and therefore needed to be exterminated. In the 1970s, though, the pink triangle would become a symbol of resistance against homophobia and has since been a popular symbol of LGBTQ plus pride. In 1950, Harry Hay, a member of the Communist Party, founded the Madeleine Foundation. This organization sought to improve and protect the rights of specifically gay men, though the foundation as well sought to build better relationships between homosexuals and heterosexuals. The foundation was small but grew exponentially after Dale Jennings, co-founder of the Madeleine Foundation, was arrested after allegedly soliciting an officer. In cases like these, men who were arrested under similar charges preferred to plead guilty rather than confess being a homosexual to save themselves the scrutiny of the public. Jennings, though, openly admitted to being a homosexual in court and decided he wanted to fight against the charges. His choice, which later had the case dismissed, is claimed to be the event that began to raise awareness of the gay rights movement. Later on, in 1953, Jennings separated from the organization and created One Inc. that soon became well known amongst LGBTQ plus individuals in Los Angeles, some calling it the voice of the gay and lesbian movement, as it spoke openly and demandingly regarding the interests and rights of homosexuals. The magazine detailed the discrimination gays faced, from police harassment to persecution, and as well provided essays, social commentary, and gay stories overall. In October 1954, the magazine would then be sued by the U.S. Post Office, specifically by the postmaster Otto Olesen, declaring it obscene due to the topics regarding homosexuality and therefore unmailable. In the end, though, in January 1958, the Supreme Court took up the case of One Inc. versus Olesen and ruled in favor of One Inc. Not only was the case the first Supreme Court ruling to deal with homosexuality, but it was also the first to address the First Amendment in the context of pro-homosexuality publications. The ruling then prompted a growth in gay and lesbian culture. Now, while the Supreme Court ruled in favor of One Inc., the federal government worked hard to exclude the gay community. More so during the early 50s, where communists weren't the only enemies of the government, but so were homosexuals. The Lavender Scare was instigated after President Dwight Eisenhower, in April 27, 1953, issued Executive Order 10450, which prohibited gay men and lesbians from working for any agency or federal government. He as well ordered that if any gay employees were already employed in job positions involving the government, they be fired. The argument was that homosexuals, or quote unquote sexual perverts, as sexual perversion was interchangeably used with homosexuality, could impose a threat to the security of the country because of their quote unquote indecent lifestyle that could be used against them, blackmail, by government enemies, which at the time were communists. Thousands of LGBTQ plus individuals were fired from their jobs, creating financial strain that led to homelessness and a great exclusion from society that was already present but only increased. The social inclusion, the need to repress their sexuality and fit the ideals of society, plus the financial struggle, drove many members of the gay community to commit suicide. The executive order would remain in effect for 20 more years. Now, during that same year of 1953, Eisenhower's executive order also prohibited same sex dancing as it was considered a public display of homosexuality. And again, the executive order would be in effect for 20 years. This is important to restate because in the late 1960s, friendly gay bars, or just gay bars, were commonly raided by police on the pretenses of following the state liquor authority, which ensured the protection of the public regarding individuals who consumed alcohol or establishments that offered it. But the state liquor authority as well assured that alcohol consumers were following the law, which regarded not causing public disruption like being too loud or being sexually inappropriate. Though it is argued that these bars were targeted more so because the patrons were homosexuals, that the raids became such a common occurrence that the bar owners and patrons had signals to know when a raid was about to happen. Alongside bar raids, police officers often practice something known as entrapment, which is defined as the act of tricking someone into committing a crime in order to secure their prosecution. In this case, officers would converse with gay men, leading them on and then arresting them if they act on any homosexual behavior. These undercover officers would also get clubs shut down for allowing the gathering of homosexuals. Though in 1967, New York made a ruling that the SLA, State Liquor Authority, needed substantial evidence of indecent behavior performed by homosexuals to either arrest them or close the establishment where these acts were performed, and that did not include homosexuals kissing or touching. Even so, that did not stop the constant raiding of gay bars, hence why the Stonewall Inn was raided and how the Stonewall Riots ensued.
The Stonewall Riots was a series of spontaneous protests that erupted in June 1969 at the Stonewall Inn, a gay bar in New York City's Greenwich Village. Triggered by a police raid, patrons and members of the LGBTQ community resisted, leading to a violent confrontation. The riots continued for several days and are considered a turning point in the LGBTQ rights movement, catalyzing the information of activist groups, or the formation of activist groups. They marked the beginning of the modern LGBTQ rights movement in the United States and beyond. With the annual Pride Parade commemorating the events, the Stonewall Riots were a pivotal moment, but they built on existing LGBTQ activism and were followed by ongoing progress in the fight for equal rights. The immediate impact gave us the birth of modern LGBTQ rights movement. The increased visibility and activism had a significant impact on pop culture. Annual pride parades, caused formation of pride organizations, just gave us a lot of just gave a lot of benefits to the LGBTQ community. Uh, Legal progress and cultural shifts impacting popular culture and fostering solidarity with other civil rights movements. The influence of Stonewall extended globally, inspiring LGBTQ activism worldwide. It remains a symbol of resistance and a catalyst for the ongoing fight for LGBTQ rights and acceptance. And these are some pictures here showing people who were at, okay, this is the Stonewall Inn. So this is the actual building. Um, yeah, the impact it had on society. Um, it had many impacts, like the Pride parades, as I mentioned earlier. It served as a catalyst for the gay rights movement and led to the creation of various gay activist groups in the United States and around the world. The aftermath of the Stonewall Riots saw an explosion in gay movement, organization, pride, and political activism. It was so significant that it is still celebrated to this day. And that is one of the reasons that we have Pride Month and acceptance.
Even though the Stonewall Riots is considered to be the start of the gay rights movement and should be commemorated as such, it isn't exactly a perfect picture story. The LGBTQ plus community, like other groups fighting to be seen as people during this era, had plenty of internal conflicts. The story of Stonewall is often rewritten in favor of the only people that are allowed to be viewed as the victims/heroes, cisgendered white queer men. These men directed the conversation of gay rights to only feature them, and as a result, the story often ignores trans individuals, women, and the people of color who are putting themselves in danger just like others. And it's hard to say otherwise since a lot of the pictures that were taken and made popular of Stonewall and the protests following the riots were mainly of white people. Nobody, even back then, when there was a huge push for equal rights, wanted to include people of color in their story. This wasn't just a problem in the 70s, though. The 2015 movie Stonewall, directed by Roland Emmerich, proves that almost 50 years later, Stonewall is still being whitewashed and being put in the background of other people's stories. The movie advertised itself as a reflection and retelling of the riots, when it ended up being about a cis white gay man's personal struggles, even depicting the main character as a person who threw the first brick that started the gay rights movement, when it was actually Marsha P. Johnson. Marsha was a black, non gender conforming activist who often spoke out on the AIDS epidemic and homeless queer youth. She was seen as a shining beacon of hope in the New York queer community, but is often ignored due to her being a sex worker. Similarly, Sylvia Rivera, a Puerto Rican trans activist, sex worker, and close friend of Marsha, was known to be the first to throw the Molotov cocktail. These people meant a lot to the LGBTQ plus New York community, but aren't always talked about due to their sex work and skin color. White men only allowed what they felt would be viewed as acceptable by white America, and unfortunately, the fact that Marcia and Sylvia were two sex workers of color trumped how much these people actually meant to the gay rights movement. To not include these people in Stonewall is to erase their efforts and to ignore the difficulty of being a person of color in the LGBTQ plus community.
Hello, I'm Jim. While citizens are changing their minds on LGBT, the government also make changes on their policies. In 1999, US government first recognized the Pride Month. During the year, Bill Clinton declared June Gay Pride Month, which is from June 1st to June 7th. 10 years later, in 2009, President Barack Obama changed the name from Gay Pride Month to LGBT Pride Month. In 2019, President Donald Trump recognized LGBTQ Pride Month on Twitter. In 2021, President Joe Biden recognized LGBTQ Pride Month officially. What is more, there's more changes for the laws. In 2003, all remaining laws against same-sexual behavior were invalidated through Lawrence v. Texas. On June 23, 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act was unconstitutional in the case of U.S. versus Windsor. After the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Obergefell v. Holtz, the law became unenforcement and was completely repealed in 2022 by the Respect Marriage Act.
These are our references. Thank you.